Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and it is time once again for Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent computer role-playing game. This week I'm taking a look at one that I've wanted to go over for a long time, and one which I've only just barely scratched the surface of despite playing for longer than I usually give these reviews. Tales of Maj Eyal. Developed and published by Netcore Games, it was released on Steam back on 2012, although it has been around for a fair amount of time longer. Tales of Maj Eyal is a roguelike, with a fair amount of history behind it. Although available on Steam with some DLC, the main game is also open source and available for free on the Tales of Maj Eyal site as well. The original version was supposed to be a fork off of another classic roguelike, and there's been a few rewrites over the years until the current Tales of Maj Eyal uses an engine designed just for that, although the engine T Engine 4 is available to write other games in. You'll have to excuse if this particular review kind of meanders, because there is a lot of material to cover, and basically, as a roguelike, especially one that's been around for a while at that, Tales of Maj Eyal is really deep, being rather content-full. This look will only take a very brief look at it, hopefully enough to give a sense for the game as a whole, and, give some sort of indication as to whether you'd like it or not. As to the game's start, you are given the opportunity to activate various add-ons and options, and then start a new game or load an ongoing one. Starting a new game has you choosing a character's name, gender, icon, as well as race and class. At first you only have access to a certain subset of the existing races and classes, but as you uncover them during play or achieve certain goals, you unlock more and more of them. You may also select one of the 4 campaigns, some of which may be unlocked and some of which are available as DLCs, as well as a difficulty and a permadeath mode. Permadeath can be set more or less forgiving, essentially allowing you a certain number of lives in each game to allow you to experience more of it. Each of the campaign modes has its own storyline as well, at least such as it is, with the main one being the Age of Ascendancy, which is where we'll focus. The Age of Ascendancy campaign starts off in a different area of the world with a different starting quest based on your starting race and class, although some certainly share origins. This generally consists of a phased adventure with a small starting series of areas where you proceed to the end, defeat a boss, pick up your basic material that you're going to use on, and then exit to the overworld map. As soon as you appear, you're presented with a level up screen to distribute your initial points. Each character has 3 stats: strength that governs physical attacks, saves, and encumbrance; dexterity that deals with various physical defenses, accuracy, and the ability to avoid crits; constitution that determines hit points, physical saves, and healing rate; magic that deals with spell power and spell saves; willpower that governs max stamina and mana, mental power, mental and spell saves; and finally cunning, which deals with mind power, mental saves, and crit chance. All of these stats may be prerequisites for various talents as well. Talents are divided into class and generic talents, and further subdivided into categories. Each category has 4 talents in it, set into tiers. Some talent categories require you to learn prior tiers to a certain degree before learning later ones, and some talent categories require you to spend a category point to learn them. You can spend category points not only to gain access to new categories, but also to increase the efficiency of all talents in a category you've already unlocked, basically increasing a multiplier that scales all of the effects for all of the talents there. Some races start with a category point to spend immediately, otherwise you get one at certain later levels. Talents are basically character abilities, spells, special attacks, etc. They have multiple upgrade levels on each one. Each one may have prerequisite stats, number of other talents in that category you have to learn before you learn that one, or even equipment that you have to have in order to use them. A number also require a certain level to use, and some classes have entire categories that they can't realistically access until higher level. Once you've exited the level up screen, you're dropped into the main game screen. This just represents the world in tiles, with enemies represented by sprites and a fog of war to represent where the character can see based on the light source and obstructions. In the upper left are your major indicators: your golds, your experience level, your total experience, health, mana, stamina, and sometimes breath if you're underwater or suffocating underground. If you have multiple party members, be they NPC followers or the like, you can select which one to control for a moment here. The upper right corner has the mini-map, while the bottom of the screen has icons representing each talent, rune, or other special ability, or item on a quick bar arrangement. The lower right also has a message window for global text, because you can get messages from other players on the server. You can access various screens through hotkeys or a main menu here. You can review your character's various abilities in the character screen, including your various stats, resistances, life, stamina, vision details, even your basic ability scores. Inscriptions and runes are also listed here as well, and represent various inscriptions and runes, of course, that you can pick up during play. These are basically extra magical effects that can be triggered outside of normal talents trained. You can only have a certain number of them at a time, but you may replace ones that you have with ones that you find and pick up if you wish, and may spend a category point to increase the total numbers of inscriptions that you have available. One last thing to note is about the various talents and abilities are the prodigies. At high levels, you can gain up to 2 prodigy points, which can open up very specific bonuses. Each one requires not only a prodigy point to unlock, but also one of the core 6 stats to be at very high level. Anyway, back to character information. Each character's inventory is limited by the encumbrance that they can carry, and characters can equip 2 weapon sets with a main hand and an offhand. Other inventory slots include hats, rings, cloaks, amulets, body armor, boots, hands, rings, as well as one invocable tool and a light source. Many magic items may have invocable abilities, allowing for additional spells and effects to be cast directly from them as needed. Items come in a variety of rarities, from common all the way up to named uniques and artifacts. Each item rarity can add more and more adjustments to a common item's stats, much like in other games that use similar systems. Items with a magical effect can have a power source type as well, psionic, arcane, nature, etc., or they may have power source interference, which can actually reduce the effectiveness of abilities of that power source. So, gameplay basically consists of moving around randomly generated dungeons, fighting creatures, and accomplishing quests. Combat is sort of turn-based, with the character's speed modifying how fast their turn can take, and it can be boosted from time to time. Certain abilities may also be instantaneous as well, taking no turn to use. Projectile, ranged, and area abilities let you select a target and may specifically block some areas based on range or line of sight. Interestingly enough, some projectile types actually produce a projectile that moves at a set number of tiles per turn. This means that it can be airborne over multiple turns and potentially be shot down or dodged, either by yourself or by enemies. Each level, once explored, can have exits to other levels and areas. During exploration, you may also uncover lore, which is described in a text box and may be accessed for later reference. You can also uncover various quests, which can involve exploring levels, defeating monsters, picking up particular items, and so forth. Some of these quests are uncovered randomly, for instance, escorting an NPC to a portal on a particular level, and may reward stats, even training and talents or categories. Some of these quests are part of the main quest of a campaign and unlock more and more of the quest lines sequentially as you solve them. Once you're done exploring a dungeon, you can return to the main overworld map. Unlike the dungeon interiors, this does not seem to be randomly generated, at least in the main campaign. Around the world map, other dungeons are scattered around with minimum levels to access them. You can also find various towns as well, which can have different sorts of inhabitants, some hostile in fact, and may have shops to sell or buy equipment, and usually have an NPC or 2 that give out quests. This is usually a good way to unlock other classes and races over time. During play, you may also pick up various NPC allies. Some classes, the Alchemist for instance, provide pet types or summonable allies. A number of classes also have specific unique mechanics, which can bring a bit more trouble to adapt to, but usually give a unique feel to playing each one. In terms of graphics, Tales of Maj Eyal is alright. It uses a very basic tile-based graphic system with minimal animations, but it gets the job done, and it has a more unique appearance than a number of other roguelikes I've seen. As for sound and music, Tales of Maj Eyal is passable, again. I must admit that the music did get a little grating after a while, but you can fortunately turn it off. The sound effects give decent feedback overall, so there is that. Interface gives just enough of an overview to make for quick play without being overly cumbersome. At least, except for a few of the rarer types of interactions. You can also mouse over most squares or most abilities and most enemies and such for a quick tool tap that gives you a lot of details on that particular item, whether it be an invocable ability or an enemy down to the enemy's stats and related factions. Overall, Tales of Maj Eyal is an extremely solid little roguelike. It has a deep, very customizable character build system that can make for a variety of tactical choices worth making. Between the various classes and races, talent categories, even the ability to inscribe unique abilities and pick up items that grant special actions, it makes each playthrough a little bit different, and each class offers a very solid experience, many of which reward entirely different styles of gameplay. I almost feel like it's hard to review some of these more long-term roguelikes simply because the core exploration and loot loop can be so common among all of them, and yet it's really hard to delve into the complexities of a single one without devoting way more time to them than I usually have each week. For its part, Tales of Maj Eyal offers a lot of content, whether you play the free version on their site or pay for it via Steam. It is quite a worthwhile game in my opinion, at least if you like the procedurally generated nature of roguelikes. The fact that each one of the dungeons has its own theme and in some cases its own mechanics makes exploration unpredictable, so it's not just yet another dungeon with a randomly placed room and various hallways connecting them. The presence of some events within some of these dungeons and the amount of unlockable content in the form of classes and races gives a really good reason to play through it again and again. I want to cover more of these classic roguelikes, really, but for now I think I'm just going to wrap it up here, and maybe touch on another type of RPG next week. As always, I'll put links to where you can pick this up in the description below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you've got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye.